encourage that. Today we're going to be looking at 1 Kings 17. 1 Kings, if you have your Bible. Otherwise, don't follow along.
This is good.
This is kind of interesting because the next song is going to deal about the cloud that Elijah saw, and this is just the chapter before that. But we're going to be singing about that in just a little bit. So we see the prophet Elijah now, who is a Jewish prophet, and he's living in a land where the Jews are very silent. There are many Jews there, but only 7,000 of them actually are in adherence to their covenant with God. And they're very fearful because, the prophets are being killed off for their faith. And so Elijah comes along, and we'll see what happens here. Now Elijah, the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead, said to Ahab, King Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, "Leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan River. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there." So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan, and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later, the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, "Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon, and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food." So he went to Zarephath, to the town gate. A widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar that I may drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as I have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord of God, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food there every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word the Lord spoken by Elijah. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, "Do you have something against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with, by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out to the Lord, "Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." The Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, "Look, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." So Elijah, and this woman are both examples of great faith to bring about God's will. We can know what we're supposed to do, but if we don't really believe it, it's not going to happen. God does work through people. And in this case, we see Elijah, a Jew, not ministering basically to his own people here. We see him going into a foreign land because this widow was a Phoenician woman in a land that celebrated Baal. And Baal was the god of fertility for this culture and some other cultures as well. And he was also the god of the rain. And we're going to see, if we would continue that reading into the next chapter, that he was the god of the rain to these people as well. And so when he makes a sacrifice, then he calls for for water to be poured all over the sacrifice to show that Baal, who's supposed to be the god of the rain, has no power over that. But when he asks God to light that sacrifice up, he sends fire. So we look at a couple of things here. Elijah, his very name, it means the Lord is my God. And so he's asserting that no other gods are real, that he has one God, and it is the God of Israel, the God of Jacob. And so he asserts that. And when he addresses the king, he says, whom I serve. That's something that you would say to a king, but he's addressing it as God is the king that he serves. And so I think that's very interesting too. If we look at the word Zarephath, where the widow was living, that word actually means melting, or it could mean smelting, like where you're taking metal and you're melting it down and you're separating the dross from the precious metal. And so it's about refining. He's refining their faith in this chapter here. We look at also, the faith. Elijah he's told by God to go to the brook and get his water in a strange land for him. And that ravens, birds are going to be bringing you meat and bread. I mean, if God told you that, can you imagine that? But his faith to do that, his obedience to that is incredible. And then by his own word, Elijah, they had a massive drought, and so the brook ends up drying up, and that's why he goes then to the widow. And the widow, who wasn't even a believer in the God of Israel, she was told by God himself, that this man will be coming to him, and that she needs to, provide food and drink for this man. I think that's pretty incredible too. If somebody told you that some stranger's going to be coming that has no relation to your culture, basically, and you're going to be taken care of, that's great faith. And the very fact that, he came there to a strange land and worshiping a strange God, and he's relying on this widow that he didn't even know. It's amazing. And then I thought it was, in this story too, it's a lot of chutzpah for him to say, okay, would you please get me something to drink, this strange woman? Would you walk up to somebody in the mall and say, excuse me, hey, I'm kind of thirsty, can you get me something to drink? They look at you like you were crazy. But she did hear from God, and so she, out of obedience to what the voice of God, however she understood that, so she did that. And then the chutzpah comes in when he further says, oh, well, can you get me some bread with that too, basically? Can you make me a sandwich too? I think that's pretty amazing. And the audacity of asking somebody that tells you that they are so poor that all they have is a smidgen of flour and a little bit of oil to make a cake of bread for you and your son to eat before you die, maybe of starvation. I think it's just amazing. And he says to her, well, I'll tell you what, make me one first, and then, you can make one for yourselves. And I'll just tell you, the oil is not going to dry up, the flour is not going to disappear, it's going to be replenished. That is great faith. And I think that we can all learn an amazing lesson from that great faith. Then disaster comes. So if she's seen this mighty miracle of, the multiplication of the food and the drink, and then her son grows gravely ill and stops breathing, and he dies. If you stop breathing, if you think of you being out of air, it comes from the Latin ex spirito, out of breath. That means that he died, He's expired, expiro. And so, she says, how could you bring this man to me, and is this what you've done to curse me and to confront me with my sin, that I've been punished so much? How could this happen? And so he takes the child up and he speaks to God. He speaks to God in prayer. God hears his prayer because he is in covenant with him. He has a great relationship with God. He's trusting. He's trusting for something way beyond himself. And it becomes a forerunner then to the healing that Christ will show us that's through him. And, we see these little snippets in the Old Testament of people that would be, a shadow of what Christ would be doing for us when he came in the New Testament. So it's an amazing piece, and I want to encourage you to believe in the miraculous, to have faith for the things that you don't think are even possible. Things that love God, things that he would want you to have. He'd want you to be well. He'd want you to be prosperous. He would want you to have every good and perfect gift, because they all flow from his hand. And so have the faith to believe for the things that other people would consider unbelievable. So now we'd like to pray for